Dr. Elena Vasquez had always been fascinated by the concept of folding space, but she never imagined that her late-night calculations at the Atacama Observatory would lead her to discover something that would fundamentally alter humanity's understanding of time itself. It was during the third week of October 2015-7 when the anomalous readings first appeared on her quantum telescope array, showing gravitational distortions in the Perseus arm that defied every known law of physics. The data suggested that space-time was being twisted and compressed in ways that should have been impossible, creating what appeared to be stable tunnels through the fabric of reality itself. The discovery came at a time when humanity had already established colonies on 17 different worlds. Yet interstellar travel still required decades of suspended animation to reach even the nearest star systems. Elena's team had been searching for naturally occurring wormholes for over a decade, following theoretical work begun by ancient scientists like Einstein and Hawking centuries before. But what they found was far more extraordinary than any naturally occurring phenomenon. The gravitational signatures they detected showed clear signs of artificial construction, suggesting that some intelligence had learned to manipulate the fundamental structure of the universe itself. Commander Marcus Chen of the deep space vessel Prometheus was the first to receive Elena's encrypted transmission, broadcast across the void to the outer colonies with a priority code that hadn't been used in over 50 years. The message was brief, but electrifying. "We have found evidence of engineered wormholes. Recommend immediate investigation. The implications for human expansion are beyond calculation." Marcus had spent his entire career pushing the boundaries of human exploration, leading missions to the ice moons of distant gas giants and the asteroid fields of dead solar systems. But nothing had prepared him for what Elena's data suggested. Within 6 months, a joint expedition was assembled, bringing together the finest minds from across human space. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the quantum physicist who had first theorized about stable wormhole construction, arrived from the research stations orbiting Proxima Centauri. Professor Amara Okafor, whose work on temporal mechanics had earned her 3 Nobel Prizes, joined the team via quantum communication link from her laboratory on Europa. And perhaps most intriguingly, Dr. Michon, an archaeologist who had spent years studying the mysterious megalithic structures found on several colonial worlds, insisted on being part of the mission after reviewing Elena's preliminary findings. The journey to the Perseus arm anomaly took 8 months, even with the Prometheus's advanced fusion drives operating at maximum efficiency. During the long transit, the team pored over every piece of data they had collected, trying to understand what they might encounter. The gravitational readings suggested a network of interconnected passages through space-time, each one appearing to link different regions of the galaxy in ways that would make instantaneous travel possible across distances that normally required generations to traverse. But more disturbing were the temporal readings that accompanied the spatial distortions, suggesting that the wormholes didn't just connect different places, but different times as well. Dr. Hassan was the first to notice the patterns hidden within the gravitational data, mathematical relationships that seemed eerily familiar to him from his archaeological work. The proportions and frequencies matched inscriptions he had found carved into obsidian monuments on 3 different worlds, monuments that carbon dating had placed at over 50,000 years old, far predating any known human civilization. The implications were staggering. Either these structures were built by an unknown non-human intelligence, or humanity itself had somehow achieved interstellar travel in the distant past, only to lose that capability in some forgotten catastrophe. As the Prometheus approached the anomaly region, the crew began experiencing strange temporal effects. Chronometers throughout the ship began displaying different times, sometimes varying by hours or even days. Communications with Earth became increasingly delayed and distorted, with some messages arriving before they were sent, and others disappearing entirely into the quantum foam. Elena found herself receiving responses to questions she hadn't yet asked, while Marcus discovered that his personal logs were being updated with events he had no memory of experiencing. The visual confirmation of the wormhole network came during the 3rd week of their approach, when the ship's advanced sensors finally resolved the structures against the background of distant stars. What they saw defied every expectation they had formed during the journey. The wormholes weren't the smooth, symmetric tunnels that theoretical physics had predicted, but rather organic-looking passages that pulsed and writhed like living tissue. Each entrance was surrounded by a ring of what appeared to be crystalline structures, dark and angular, that seemed to absorb all light that touched them. The entire network stretched across dozens of light-years, connecting seemingly random points in space, with threads of twisted space-time. Dr. Tanaka's initial scans revealed that the wormholes were indeed artificially constructed, but using technologies that operated on principles completely unknown to human science. The crystalline structures surrounding each entrance appeared to be composed of matter, organized at the quantum level in ways that shouldn't have been stable, creating fields that could manipulate the fundamental constants of physics within their vicinity. Temperature, gravity, even the speed of light, seemed to be variable within the influence of these devices, allowing them to create stable passages through dimensions that existed parallel to normal space-time. The decision to send a probe through one of the smaller wormholes was not made lightly. The risks were enormous. They had no way of knowing where the passage led, or whether anything they sent through would ever return. But the potential rewards were equally vast. If they could understand how these structures functioned, humanity would gain the ability to travel, not just across the galaxy instantly, but potentially across time itself. Marcus selected a heavily shielded reconnaissance probe, equipped with quantum communication links and enough sensors to map whatever lay beyond the passage. The probe's journey through the wormhole lasted only milliseconds from their perspective, but the data it transmitted back suggested that it had traveled not just through space, but through time as well. The astronomical readings it collected showed star positions that matched archival data from Earth's night sky, approximately 15,000 years in the past. More disturbing still, the probe's biological sensors detected organic compounds in the vacuum around the exit point. Compounds that formed complex patterns suggesting the presence of life in what should have been empty space. Elena spent weeks analyzing the probe's data, cross-referencing the temporal displacement readings with historical records and archaeological findings from across human space. What emerged was a pattern that suggested the wormhole network was not random, but rather deliberately constructed to connect specific moments in galactic history. The passages linked periods of great change and upheaval, times when civilizations rose and fell, when species evolved or went extinct, when the very structure of matter itself underwent fundamental transformations. Professor Okafor's analysis of the temporal mechanics involved revealed something even more disturbing. The wormholes weren't just passive passages through time, they were actively monitoring and potentially manipulating the flow of causality itself. The quantum signatures she detected suggested that the network was designed to create stable time loops, allowing information and possibly matter to travel backward in time without creating the paradoxes that classical physics predicted would destroy reality. But this stability came at a cost. The network appeared to be feeding on temporal energy, drawing power from the very flow of time itself. Dr. Hassan's archaeological expertise proved crucial in understanding the purpose behind the network. By comparing the locations and time periods connected by the wormholes with his database of ancient monuments and artifacts, he discovered that every major archaeological mystery in human space was linked to the network in some way. The megalithic structures he had spent years studying weren't just markers or monuments. They were components of a vast temporal mapping system, designed to track and record the movements of something through both space and time. The breakthrough came when Hassan realized that the mathematical relationships encoded in the ancient monuments weren't just abstract concepts, but actual navigation coordinates for the wormhole network. The builders of these structures had left behind a star map that spanned not just the galaxy, but time itself, marking the locations where the network could be accessed and indicating the destinations that each passage could reach. But the map also contained warnings, symbols and inscriptions that spoke of terrible consequences for those who misused the power to travel through time. As the Prometheus continued its investigation, the crew began experiencing increasingly severe temporal distortions. Elena found herself remembering conversations that hadn't yet taken place, while Marcus discovered that his childhood memories were changing, as if events in his past were being retroactively altered by their presence near the wormhole network. The ship's artificial intelligence systems began reporting paradoxical data, receiving sensor readings from locations they hadn't yet visited, and analyzing samples that hadn't yet been collected. The most disturbing discovery came when they detected another ship approaching their position, a vessel that appeared to be human in origin, but using technology decades more advanced than anything in their databases. When they attempted to make contact, the response they received was their own voices, speaking from what appeared to be the far future, warning them about the dangers of the network, and pleading with them to abandon their investigation before they triggered a temporal cascade that would unravel the fabric of causality itself. Dr. Tanaka's analysis of the approaching ship's quantum signature revealed that it was indeed the Prometheus, but from a timeline where their mission had continued deeper into the network. The future version of their ship carried scars that spoke of battles fought across time itself, damage patterns that could only have been caused by weapons that manipulated the fundamental forces of reality. The warning transmitted by their future selves painted a picture of cosmic horror that challenged everything they thought they understood about the universe. The wormhole network, they learned, was not created by any single civilization, but was instead the result of a temporal war that had raged across multiple timelines simultaneously. Ancient races had discovered the secret of time travel and had used it to fight battles that spanned millennia, each side attempting to rewrite history to ensure their own victory, while preventing their enemies from ever existing in the first place. The builders of the network, whoever they had been, had eventually realized that their war was destroying not just themselves, but the very structure of time itself. The wormhole passages were their final desperate attempt to create stable pathways that could preserve some version of causality while containing the damage they had caused. But the network required constant maintenance, constant monitoring, and the civilizations that had created it had long since destroyed themselves in their temporal conflicts. Elena's final calculations revealed the true horror of their situation. The network was failing, its ancient systems finally succumbing to the erosion of eons. Without proper maintenance, the wormholes were becoming unstable, creating temporal fractures that were spreading outward from each passage, like cracks in reality itself. The archaeological sites that Hassan had studied weren't just monuments. They were containment facilities, designed to prevent these fractures from expanding beyond the boundaries of the network. The monuments were failing as well, their quantum crystalline structures degrading after millennia of containing forces that existed outside normal space-time. Marcus faced an impossible decision. They could attempt to use the network themselves, traveling back in time to prevent the original temporal war from ever beginning. But doing so would require them to become part of the very conflict they sought to prevent. They could try to repair the failing containment systems, but that would require technologies they didn't possess, and knowledge that had been lost for countless millennia. Or they could simply return home and prepare humanity for the temporal catastrophe that would inevitably consume everything they had ever known. The final entry in Elena's research logs, transmitted back to human space, just before the Prometheus vanished into one of the wormhole passages, contained coordinates for 17 different locations across human space, where ancient monuments had been detected. Her message was simple but urgent. The Guardians are failing. We must become the Guardians ourselves, or watch everything we have ever been or will ever be fade into the quantum foam of collapsed causality. The observatories throughout human space continue to monitor the Perseus Arm anomaly, watching for any sign of the Prometheus's return, but the signals they receive grow stranger with each passing day. Transmissions that arrive before they are sent, warnings from futures that may never exist, and data from expeditions that have not yet been launched. Some scientists believe that Elena and her team succeeded in their mission, becoming part of the eternal cycle of Guardians who monitor the network and prevent temporal catastrophe. Others fear that they have become trapped in the same temporal loops that destroyed the network's original builders, doomed to fight the same battles across infinite timelines, while reality slowly unravels around them. The ancient monuments continue to pulse with their mysterious energy, their warning systems still active after thousands of generations. And sometimes, in the deep space between stars, explorers report seeing ships that shouldn't exist, vessels from timelines that diverged long ago, crewed by versions of themselves who made different choices and faced different fates. The universe, it seems, is far more fragile than humanity ever imagined, held together by forces we barely understand and protected by Guardians who may have once been us, fighting an endless war against the chaos that lurks in the spaces between moments. The question that haunts every astronomer and physicist who studies Elena's final transmission is not whether humanity will one day master the secrets of time travel, but whether we already have, and whether our future selves are even now moving through the shadows of the past, making the subtle adjustments that ensure we survive long enough to eventually face the same impossible choices they once did. In the endless dance of cause and effect that spans the cosmos, we may all be both the Guardians and the guarded, the saviors and the saved, locked in temporal loops that we created to preserve the very existence we fear to lose.